The rain began before sunset. Dark clouds covered the small town of Oak Ridge. Cold wind moved across the empty fields. Most people stayed inside their homes. But Ethan Walker was still working on his farm. He lived alone in an old farmhouse near the edge of town. His parents had passed away years ago. Since then, he spent most of his days taking care of his land and animals. The storm grew stronger every minute. Thunder shook the sky. Lightning flashed above the fields. Ethan finished locking the barn doors and started walking toward his house. Then he heard something. It was not thunder. It was not the wind. It sounded like a child crying. Ethan stopped. He listened carefully. The sound came from the forest near his farm. For a moment, he thought he had imagined it. But the cry came again, soft, weak, and full of fear. "No child should be outside in weather like this," he said quietly. He grabbed a flashlight from the porch and walked toward the trees. Rain hit his face, mud covered his boots. The wind pushed against him, the crying became louder. Then suddenly the ground shook, a bright blue light flashed between the trees. Ethan froze. The light lasted only a few seconds. When it disappeared, the forest became dark again. His heart beat faster. He moved carefully toward the light. A large hole had appeared in the ground. Smoke rose into the rain. Broken pieces of strange metal were scattered everywhere. The metal was smooth and silver. Small blue lights still glowed on its surface. Ethan had never seen anything like it. At the center of the crater lay a small object. It looked like a metal capsule. The door was open. And beside it sat a little girl. She looked about 8 years old. Her long silver hair was wet from the rain. Her clothes were torn. Her pale blue eyes looked frightened. She wrapped her arms around herself and trembled from the cold. The girl looked up at Ethan. Fear filled her eyes. She tried to stand. But she fell to the ground. Ethan slowly knelt beside her. "It's okay," he said gently. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl stared at him. She did not understand his words, but his voice seemed to calm her. He removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. The girl looked surprised. For several seconds neither of them spoke. Then she whispered something. The language sounded strange. Ethan could not understand it. He shook his head. The girl looked around the broken capsule. Tears filled her eyes. She pointed toward the sky. Then she whispered one word in English. "Hide." Ethan felt a chill. "Who wants to find you?" he asked. The girl lowered her head. She looked terrified. Another flash of lightning crossed the sky. The little girl suddenly covered her ears. She was shaking badly. Ethan realized she could not stay outside. He carefully picked her up. She was very light. At first she became frightened, but after a few moments she relaxed. The warmth of his jacket surrounded her as they walked back toward the farmhouse. The girl looked over Ethan's shoulder. She kept staring at the sky, as if she expected something to appear above the clouds. Inside the house, Ethan lit the fireplace. He gave the girl a blanket and some warm soup. She sat quietly at the kitchen table. Her eyes moved around the room. Everything seemed new to her. The clock, the television, the pictures on the wall. She touched the wooden table carefully, as if she had never seen wood before. Ethan sat across from her. "What is your name?" he asked. The girl remained silent. After several moments she softly said, "Lyra." Ethan smiled. "My name is Ethan." The girl repeated his name slowly. "Ethan." For the first time, a small smile appeared on her face. But the peaceful moment did not last. A strange sound suddenly came from the broken metal device lying beside her. Blue lights appeared across its surface. The device began making soft beeping sounds. Lyra's face immediately turned pale. She stood up quickly. Fear filled her eyes. The device projected red symbols into the air. Ethan could not understand them. But one message suddenly changed into English. The words appeared clearly above the table. "Target located." Lyra stepped backward. Her body trembled. Tears filled her eyes. She looked directly at Ethan and whispered, "They found me, at that exact moment, far above Earth." Something enormous moved silently through the darkness of space, and its destination was the small farm in Oak Ridge, ***. The red words remained floating above the kitchen table. Target located. Ethan could not take his eyes off them. The strange letters glowed inside the dark room. Outside, the storm continued. Rain hit the windows. Thunder rolled across the fields. Lyra stood beside the table. Her small hands were shaking. Tears filled her blue eyes. She looked at the device as if it were a monster. Then suddenly she grabbed it. The red light disappeared. The room became quiet again. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Ethan slowly stood from his chair. "What does that mean?" he asked. Lyra lowered her head. She held the device tightly against her chest. "They know," she whispered. "Who knows?" She looked toward the window, the stars. Ethan did not understand. Everything that had happened tonight felt impossible. The strange capsule, the silver metal, the unknown language. And now this warning. He wanted answers. But the little girl looked more frightened than before. He gently placed a cup of warm tea in front of her. "You are safe here," he said. Lyra looked at him. For a moment, she seemed surprised by his words. As if nobody had ever told her that before, she slowly sat down. The fire burned quietly inside the fireplace. Outside, the storm slowly began to weaken. Ethan noticed something strange. Lyra kept looking at the ceiling, almost as if she could hear something far away. After several minutes, she suddenly asked, "Your world is called Earth?" Ethan nodded. "Yes." She looked down at the table. "Earth is not on their maps." "What maps?" "The maps of the galaxy." Ethan frowned. The word galaxy made his heart beat faster. He wanted to believe this was some kind of dream. But the fear in her voice felt real. Before he could ask another question, the lights inside the house suddenly went out. The room became dark. The clock stopped. The refrigerator became silent. Even the fireplace seemed smaller. Ethan walked toward the window. The entire farm had lost power. The houses in the distance were dark too. "What happened?" he asked. Lyra slowly stood. "They are searching." A strange sound came from outside. It was not thunder. It was a low humming noise, deep and powerful. Ethan opened the front door. Cold air entered the house, above the fields. Hundreds of small blue lights moved silently through the sky. They were not airplanes. They made no sound. They moved too smoothly. Lyra immediately stepped backward. Her face became pale. "No," she whispered. The blue lights stopped above the forest. Then they disappeared one by one. The darkness returned. Several seconds later, the electricity came back. The kitchen lights turned on. The clock started again. Everything looked normal. But Ethan knew nothing was normal anymore. He closed the door. Lyra sat beside the fire. She looked exhausted. Finally, she spoke. "When they find me, people die." Ethan sat across from her. "Who are they?" Lyra remained silent, her eyes filled with sadness. "I don't know their names anymore." Ethan did not understand how someone could forget something like that. But he could see that the little girl was carrying a terrible memory. After some time, she fell asleep beside the fireplace. Ethan covered her with a blanket. The silver device remained beside her. The surface was dark now. No lights, no sounds. Yet Ethan could not stop looking at it. Around midnight, he walked outside. The storm had ended. The sky was finally clear. Thousands of stars covered the darkness above. Everything looked peaceful. Then he noticed something strange. One star was moving, slowly, silently. It became brighter, larger. It was not a star. It was something else. Something enormous, far above Earth, inside a dark command room. Dozens of glowing screens filled the walls. Tall figures stood in silence. Their faces remained hidden beneath silver helmets. One of the screens showed a picture. It was Lyra, A voice spoke inside the room. "The signal has been confirmed." Another figure stepped forward. "Is the child alive?" "Yes, Commander." The room became silent. The commander looked at Earth rotating on the screen. His voice was cold. "After 10 years. We finally found her." One officer hesitated. "What are your orders?" The commander stared at the image of this small blue planet. His answer was simple: prepare the fleet. Back on Earth. Ethan stood alone outside his farmhouse. The moving light in the sky slowly disappeared behind the clouds. He felt something he had never felt before: fear, not for himself, but for the little girl sleeping inside his home. Because deep in his heart, he already knew. Whatever was coming for Lyra, it was getting closer. Morning arrived quietly. The storm had finally passed. Golden sunlight covered the fields around Ethan's farm. Birds sang in the trees. The world looked peaceful again. But inside the farmhouse, nothing felt normal. Ethan had barely slept. The moving light in the sky remained in his mind. The strange warning, the blue lights above the forest, and the fear in Lyra's eyes. All of it felt real. He walked into the kitchen. Lyra was already awake. She stood beside the window, watching the sky. She held the silver device tightly in her hands. For a little girl, she looked far too worried. Ethan prepared breakfast: eggs, toast, and warm milk. Lyra looked at the food carefully. As if she had never seen some of it before, she touched the bread. Then looked at Ethan. "You made this?" He smiled. "Yes." She took a small bite. A moment later, she smiled softly. "This world has good food." It was the first time Ethan had heard her say something happy. For a few minutes, everything felt normal. Then the television suddenly turned on by itself. The screen filled with black and white lines. A loud noise came from the speakers. Ethan quickly grabbed the remote, but nothing worked. Every channel showed the same picture. Static. Lyra immediately stood up. Fear returned to her face. The silver device in her hands began glowing blue. The room became cold. The lights started flickering. Then a voice filled the house. It did not come from the television. It came from everywhere: the walls, the ceiling, even the air itself. The voice was deep, slow, and emotionless. "Designation L-17 detected." Lyra stepped backward. Ethan moved in front of her. The voice continued. "Return immediately." The television screen suddenly changed. A symbol appeared, a circle surrounded by stars. Lyra closed her eyes. "No," she whispered. The voice spoke again. "Failure to comply will result in planetary action." Ethan felt his blood turn cold. "What does that mean?" he asked. Lyra opened her eyes. "They destroy worlds." The television went dark. The lights stopped flickering. Silence returned outside. The wind moved through the fields as if nothing had happened. Ethan looked at Lyra. "What are you?" Tears filled her eyes for several seconds. She could not speak. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know anymore." Suddenly, a loud sound came from outside. A truck stopped near the farmhouse. Ethan looked through the window. It was his old friend, Noah Bennett. Noah owned the farm next door. He often visited to help with repairs, but today he looked worried. He entered the house quickly. "Ethan, did your television go crazy too?" Ethan froze. "What?" "The whole town lost signals for a few minutes," Noah said. "Every screen showed strange symbols." Lyra quietly stepped behind Ethan. Noah noticed her. His eyes widened. "Who is this?" Ethan hesitated. "This is Lyra." Noah smiled kindly. "Well, hello there." Lyra said nothing. Her eyes remained on the window. Noah sat down. "The strange thing is, every radio in town stopped working," he said. "The sheriff is checking the power station." Ethan nodded. But his mind was somewhere else. If the whole town had seen the signal, then whatever was searching for Lyra was getting stronger. Later that afternoon, Lyra walked outside alone. She sat beneath a large tree near the field. Ethan watched her from a distance. She looked very small against the open sky. After several minutes, he joined her. She pointed upward. "The stars are different here." Ethan looked up. "They look the same to me." She smiled sadly. "Because this is your home." He sat beside her. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "My people once protected many worlds. What happened?" She lowered her eyes. "The war happened." "What war?" "The war that killed the stars." Ethan did not understand, but the sadness in her voice felt real. "Did you fight?" Lyra looked at her hands. "I was made for the war." Those words sent a chill through him. A little girl, made for war. Before Ethan could ask more questions, the silver device suddenly activated again. This time, a picture appeared above it. A large ship, dark and enormous. Floating in space, below the image, one line appeared in English. "Arrival. 72 hours." Lyra stared at the message. Her face became pale. "They're coming," she whispered, far above Earth. The giant ship moved silently through the darkness. Thousands of smaller ships followed behind it, inside the command chamber. The silver-armored commander looked at the blue planet on the screen. One officer spoke quietly. "The child is protected by humans." The commander remained silent. Then he gave his order. "If they stand beside her, then humanity becomes part of the mission." Back on the farm, the sun slowly disappeared behind the hills. Ethan looked at the frightened child sitting beside him. For the first time, he realized something terrifying. The danger was no longer coming. It had already found them. The message remained floating above the silver device. "Arrival. 72 hours." The blue numbers slowly counted down. Lyra stared at them without moving. Her small hands trembled. Ethan could see the fear in her eyes. Whatever was coming to Earth was not a simple rescue mission. Someone wanted the child badly, and they were getting closer every minute. The sun disappeared behind the hills. Cold air moved across the farm. The fields became quiet. Even the birds seemed to have vanished. Ethan picked up the device. The strange symbols continued moving across the screen. Most of them made no sense, but one image caught his attention. It showed a star surrounded by fire. Under it was a symbol that looked broken. Lyra quickly took the device back. Her face became pale. "Do not touch that," she said. Ethan looked surprised. "What is it?" Lyra remained silent for several seconds. Then she whispered, "My home." The two returned to the farmhouse. Ethan prepared dinner, but Lyra barely touched her food. She continued looking toward the windows, as if expecting someone to appear outside. Around midnight, Ethan heard a noise, metal scraping against metal. He grabbed a flashlight and walked outside. The moon was hidden behind clouds. The farm looked dark and empty. The sound came from the old barn. The building had not been used for years. Its wooden walls were damaged. The roof leaked during rain. Ethan slowly opened the door. The flashlight moved across old tools, broken equipment dust, and then he stopped. Lyra stood in the center of the barn. The silver device floated in the air before her. Blue light covered the entire room. Small symbols moved around her body. Ethan could hardly breathe. Lyra's eyes were glowing. The floor beneath her feet shined with strange patterns. Then suddenly the device projected a large image. A city appeared. Tall silver towers reached the clouds. Hundreds of flying ships moved between the buildings. The sky was filled with stars. The city looked beautiful and completely impossible. Lyra looked at the image quietly. "My world," she said. Ethan slowly walked closer. What happened to it? For a long moment she said nothing. Then the image changed. The beautiful city disappeared. Fire covered the sky. Buildings fell. Ships exploded. Dark shapes moved above the clouds. People ran through the streets. The entire world was dying. Lyra closed her eyes. "I remember this part." Ethan felt cold. "Were you there?" She nodded. I was very small. The image changed again. This time, several tall figures stood around a machine. A little girl stood in the center. The girl looked exactly like Lyra. Blue light surrounded her. One of the figures spoke in an unknown language. The machine became brighter. Then the image ended. The barn became dark again. Ethan looked at Lyra. What were they doing? Lyra's voice became very quiet. They changed me. Why? She looked down at her hands. To end the war. Ethan could not understand. She was only a child. How could a child stop a war? Before he could ask another question, the old radio inside the barn suddenly turned on. Static filled the room. Then a voice appeared. Ethan Walker. Ethan froze. The voice knew his name. This is Sheriff Daniel Brooks. The signal was weak. If you receive this message, come to town immediately. There are strange lights near the highway. People have disappeared. The radio became silent. Ethan looked at Lyra. She had become completely pale. They sent scouts, she whispered. The two hurried back toward the house. But something stopped Ethan near the edge of the field. Several blue lights stood between the trees. At first he thought they were people holding flashlights. Then the lights moved. Tall shadows stepped forward. They were not human. Their bodies were thin. Their eyes glowed white. Metal armor covered their skin. None of them made a sound. Lyra grabbed Ethan's arm. Her entire body trembled. They found me. One of the figures raised its hand. A beam of blue light appeared. The grass beneath it turned black. Ethan quickly pulled Lyra behind him. He had no weapon, no way to fight. The figures slowly moved closer. Then suddenly the old farm tractor beside the barn started by itself. Its engine roared loudly. The headlights turned on. The machine drove directly toward the creatures. The figures jumped backward. The tractor crashed into the fence. Everything became silent. Ethan looked at Lyra. Her eyes were glowing again. The tractor had moved without anyone touching it. The creatures stared at her. One of them spoke in a strange language. Lyra understood. She slowly translated. They call me the Star Child. The leader stepped forward. Its white eyes fixed on her. Then it spoke again. Lyra's face filled with fear. What did it say? Ethan asked. Her voice shook. It said the destroyer has awakened. Suddenly a bright light appeared in the sky. The entire field became white. The creatures immediately looked upward, far above the farm. A massive dark object slowly appeared between the clouds. It was far larger than any airplane. Its lights covered the night sky. The giant ship had finally arrived, and everyone on the farm understood one terrible truth. Lyra was not simply hiding from the galaxy. The galaxy was afraid of her. The giant ship hung above the clouds. Its dark shape covered the stars. No sound came from it. No engines, no fire, only silence. The blue lights on its surface slowly moved like living things. Ethan stood in the field beside Lyra. The cold wind pushed against them. The strange soldiers near the trees had stopped moving. Even they seemed afraid. Lyra stared at the ship. Her face had become completely pale. She whispered only one word. No. The giant vessel suddenly released a beam of white light. It touched the ground several hundred meters away. The earth shook. Dust filled the air. The soldiers immediately stepped back. Several seconds later, a tall figure appeared inside the light, unlike the others. This being wore silver armor covered with glowing symbols. Its eyes shined like blue fire. It walked slowly toward the farm. Every step seemed calm. Every movement carried authority. Lyra began trembling. Ethan stepped in front of her. The figure stopped a few meters away. Then it spoke perfect English. Designation L-17. Return with us. Ethan frowned. She is not going anywhere. The being looked directly at him. Its face showed no emotion. You protect something you do not understand. Human, Ethan answered immediately. She is a child. The figure remained silent for several seconds. Then it said, No, Lyra lowered her head. The silver-armored visitor slowly raised its hand. A blue image appeared in the air. At first, Ethan could not understand what he was seeing. Entire planets burned, cities disappeared, stars exploded. Millions of ships drifted through space. The image changed again. At the center stood a small child surrounded by blue light. The child was Lyra. Ethan looked at her in shock. The visitor spoke. 4 civilizations died because of her existence. Lyra closed her eyes. Tears ran down her cheeks. I didn't do it, she whispered. The being continued. She was created during the last war. She was designed to control energy older than stars. Her people lost control. Ethan looked at the little girl standing beside him. She looked frightened, broken, small. Nothing about her seemed dangerous. The being pointed toward her. The galaxy fears her awakening, Ethan spoke quietly. Then why is she running? The visitor paused. For the first time its expression changed. Because she fears herself. The field became silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Lyra slowly looked up. Her voice shook. I don't remember everything, the being answered. Memory was removed after the disaster. Lyra stared at the giant ship above the clouds. How many years? The visitor replied, 321. Ethan felt cold. That number made no sense. Lyra looked only 8 years old. She slowly sat on the ground. My family? The visitor remained silent. Lyra understood the answer before it came. Tears rolled down her face. Everyone she had known was gone. Everyone she loved had died centuries ago. Earth was the first home she had known since then. Suddenly, a loud sound came from the road. Several vehicles approached the farm. Sheriff Daniel Brooks and several officers stepped out. They stared at the giant ship above them. One officer nearly dropped his flashlight. The sheriff looked at Ethan. What in God's name is happening? Nobody answered. The silver-armored visitor looked toward the humans. Leave this place. The sheriff placed his hand on his weapon. This is our town. The visitor looked at him for several seconds. Then it said, We do not seek war with Earth, the sheriff replied. Then leave the little girl alone. Lyra looked at the humans standing before her. None of them knew who she truly was. None of them understood the danger, yet they still stood beside her. For the first time in many years, she felt something she had forgotten. Belonging. Suddenly the sky changed. A red light appeared above the giant ship. Alarms sounded from the silver visitor's armor. The strange soldiers immediately looked upward. The visitor's expression changed. It spoke quickly in another language. Lyra's eyes widened. What happened? Ethan asked. She looked terrified. Another fleet is here. The giant ship above the farm turned toward the stars. Hundreds of lights suddenly appeared in the darkness. But these ships were different. Their surfaces glowed red. Their shapes looked sharp and dangerous. The silver visitor stared upward. One of its soldiers spoke with fear. They found her first. Lyra stepped backward. Her breathing became faster. Ethan looked at her. Who are they? Her answer came softly. They don't want to capture me. He felt his heart sink. What do they want? Tears filled her eyes. They came to kill me. High above Earth. Thousands of red ships surrounded the planet. Their leader appeared on every screen inside the Silver Fleet. Its voice was cold. Hand over the Star Child, or your fleet dies with her. The battle for one small girl had finally begun. And Earth was now standing in the middle of a war between the stars. The red ships filled the night sky. Thousands of glowing lights surrounded Earth. The stars themselves seemed to disappear behind the enormous fleet. Everyone on the farm stood in silence. Sheriff Daniel Brooks. The officers, Ethan and little Lyra, all of them looked upward. The silver warship above the clouds remained still. But the red fleet continued moving closer. The air suddenly became cold. A loud sound echoed across the sky. Not like thunder, not like engines. It sounded like a giant metal door opening somewhere among the stars. The silver-armored commander turned toward the sky for the first time. Fear appeared in his glowing eyes. He spoke quietly. "The Crimson Dominion has arrived." Ethan looked at him. "Who are they?" The commander answered, "The last empire of the old war. They destroy entire worlds to find her." Lyra lowered her head. Her breathing became faster. She covered her ears with both hands. The red lights above seemed to hurt her. Suddenly every television in the town turned on. Phones began ringing. Car radios filled with static. A voice echoed across Earth. "This planet shelters the Star Child. Surrender her and your world will survive. Protect her and your world will burn." People across Oak Ridge came outside. They looked at the strange lights above the clouds. Fear spread through the town. Meanwhile, inside the farmhouse, the silver device began glowing brighter than ever before. Blue symbols covered the walls. The floor started shaking. Lyra stepped backward. "No," she whispered. Ethan quickly moved beside her. "What is happening?" She looked at him. Her eyes had begun glowing again. "I remember them." The room suddenly filled with blue light. Images appeared around them. Not from the device, but from Lyra herself. Ethan saw giant cities, burning stars, massive fleets fighting in space, entire worlds exploding. And at the center of everything stood a little girl, Lyra. Only this Lyra looked different. Her eyes burned like stars. Energy surrounded her body. Thousands of ships floated around her. Then they disappeared in a single flash. Ethan could hardly breathe. The memories continued. Scientists stood around the child. Machines connected to her. One voice said, "She can control the heart energy," another voice answered. "She can save us," a third voice spoke quietly. "Or destroy all of us." The vision vanished. Lyra fell to her knees. Tears ran down her face. "I remember now." Ethan knelt beside her. "What are you?" She looked at him with pain in her eyes. "My people called me Astra, the Star Child. They placed something inside me." "What?" She looked toward the sky, the energy that built the first stars. Outside, the red fleet began moving closer. The silver commander received a message. A red hologram appeared before him. A tall figure covered in black armor spoke. "Give us the child," the commander answered. "She is under our protection." The black figure laughed. "You cannot protect her. Even she cannot protect herself." The message ended. Moments later, several red ships entered Earth's atmosphere. Fire covered the sky. People across the town screamed. Cars stopped. Power failed. The invasion had begun. Sheriff Brooks gathered the townspeople inside the school building. Fear filled every face. Nobody understood what was happening. But everyone knew the danger was real. At the farmhouse, Ethan looked at Lyra. She appeared exhausted, small, broken. Nothing about her looked dangerous. Yet entire fleets had crossed the galaxy because of her. Suddenly, one red ship landed in the nearby field. Its doors opened. Dark soldiers stepped outside. Their armor glowed red. Weapons pointed toward the farmhouse. The leader spoke. "The Star Child belongs to death." Ethan stood in front of Lyra. The sheriff and his officers raised their weapons. The soldiers laughed. Human guns meant nothing to them. Lyra slowly stood. The wind began moving around her. Blue light appeared beneath her feet. Ethan turned toward her. Her eyes were shining brighter than before. She looked frightened. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she whispered. The red soldiers moved forward. One raised his weapon before he could fire. Time itself seemed to stop. The wind disappeared. The sound vanished. Everyone froze. Only Lyra remained standing. Blue light covered the entire field. The stars above Earth suddenly became brighter. The red soldiers looked afraid. One of them whispered, "Impossible." Lyra looked at her own hands. Small lines of light moved across her skin. Memories continued returning. Voices, worlds, wars, and one final message from her mother. A voice inside her mind said, "If the darkness returns, choose your own family." Tears rolled down her face. She looked at Ethan, the man who had given her food, warmth, and a home. She finally understood. Earth had become her family. The blue light around her grew stronger. The red fleet above the planet suddenly stopped moving. Thousands of ships detected the same thing. The Star Child had awakened, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy remembered why it had feared one small child. The blue light covered the entire field. It spread across the grass like waves in water. The red soldiers stood frozen, their weapons lowered without command. Even the air felt different, heavier, quieter, as if the world itself was waiting. Ethan stood beside Lyra. He could feel the power on her. But she was not smiling, she was crying. Her small hands trembled as light moved across her skin. Above them, the sky was no longer calm. Two massive fleets surrounded Earth, one silver, one red, both waiting for a single child to decide their fate. Sheriff Daniel Brooks slowly stepped forward. His voice was low. "Lyra, what is happening?" She did not answer at first. Her eyes were focused on the sky, as if she could see things others could not. Then she whispered, "I can hear them all." Ethan frowned. "Who?" "All the ships. All the voices." Her knees almost gave out. Ethan held her steady. The blue light around her reacted instantly. The ground shook softly. The red soldiers stepped back again, fear spreading through them like fire. Far above Earth, inside the silver command ship, alarms were ringing. The commander stared at the readings. His voice was tense. "Her neural core is fully awake," a soldier replied. "Then she will remember everything," the commander whispered. Too late. Back on Earth, Lyra slowly raised her head. Her eyes were glowing brighter now, but her voice was calm, almost too calm. "I remember the war." She looked at Ethan. "I remember who I was made to be." The wind stopped completely. Even the red fleet above seemed to wait. Lyra continued, "I was never a child." Ethan shook his head. "No, you are just a kid." She looked at him with sadness. "I was a weapon before I learned your name." Silence followed those words. Heavy and painful, Lyra turned toward the red soldiers, then toward the silver fleet, both enemies, both afraid of her. She whispered, "I destroyed stars. I ended wars. I was never allowed to choose." Her hands shook again. The blue light flickered, but then Ethan stepped forward. He stood right in front of her. "Lyra, look at me." She hesitated. Her glowing eyes met his. Ethan spoke slowly. "You are here now. This is Earth. This is your home." The words hit her harder than any weapon. Her eyes filled with tears again. For a moment, the glowing light around her weakened. The entire battlefield changed. The fleets above detected it instantly. The commander shouted, "She is stabilizing emotionally. This is our chance." The red ships began charging weapons. The silver fleet activated shields. War was about to begin again. But Lyra raised her hand. Everything stopped again. The sky froze. The wind vanished. Even the distant explosions paused mid-air. She was in control now, but she was shaking. "I don't want this," she whispered. "I don't want any of it." Ethan stepped closer. "You don't have to fight." Her voice broke. "But they will destroy Earth if I don't go." Sheriff Brooks spoke firmly. "Then we fight them." The townspeople gathered behind him, farmers, workers, families, all standing together. No one understood the galaxy, but they understood one thing: they would not give her away. Lyra looked at them, confused. "They would die for me?" Ethan nodded. "Yes." Tears rolled down her face. No one ever did that before. The blue light around her began to change. It was no longer violent. It was warm, like sunlight, far above Earth. The fleets noticed something terrifying. The Star Child was no longer responding to command signals. She was choosing independently. The commander of the Silver Fleet spoke softly. "She is no longer a weapon." The Red commander responded. "Then she is unpredictable." A new message came through all channels from Lyra herself. Her voice echoed across every ship, every screen, every world listening in the galaxy. "I am not your weapon. I am not your prisoner. I am not your war." The entire sky went silent. Then she turned toward Ethan. Her voice softened completely. "But I am also not alone anymore." She stepped forward and gently touched Ethan's hand. The blue light spread outward. Not as destruction, but as protection. A glowing shield formed around Earth, covering oceans, mountains, cities, and farms. The Red Fleet fired first, but the attack stopped in the shield like rain on glass. The Silver commander whispered, "She chose them." The Red commander shouted, "Then erase them all." But nothing worked. The shield held, because it was not powered by war anymore. It was powered by choice, by trust, by family. Lyra looked at the sky one last time, then she spoke softly. "I choose Earth." A blinding light filled the sky. And for the first time in galactic history, an entire war fleet stopped, not because it was defeated, but because it was no longer needed. The red ships slowly turned away. The Silver Fleet lowered its weapons, and the galaxy learned something it had forgotten long ago. Even the most dangerous child in the universe can choose to be human, and on a small farm on Earth. Ethan simply held her hand, because in the end, she was not a weapon. She was his daughter,